So we're going to talk about what makes a successful equipment management program. And HECO's been doing equipment management since the early 80s. And it kind of started out with the GM plants in Kalamazoo, or in Michigan, when each plant kind of had their own little stash of spares. And it didn't make sense because one plant was buying motors and repairing motors that other plants could use, and there was no continuity in what they were doing. So over the years, we've kind of narrowed it down to the 6 elements of a successful program. And that's spares management, data management, specifications, vendor management, repairs, and the maintenance of your equipment. We start out with spares. When we do a program, we identify all every item that's classified as a spare. And we want to make sure that that piece of equipment, and I'm going to say this over and over, is ready for service. It does you no good to have spare motors on your shelf if you can't be pulled and put into an application when it's needed. Spare motors are very expensive to purchase. They're very expensive to maintain. They're very expensive because of the carrying cost. And if you guys go out and you beg the plant manager for a $50,000 spare motor, it sits on your shelf for 10 years, so when you need it, it's not ready for service. You're not going to be looked on very well. So we're going to talk about how to maintain those spares and how to manage the spares. Now, when we do a plant survey, we go in and we attach a unique identifier to each motor. That number means nothing to you guys. It's basically that motor's social security number. So we're going to go in the plant, we're going to tag all the motors, and then we're going to make recommendations on inventory levels. Do you have too many motors? Do you have not enough motors? Where are you vulnerable if you have a breakdown? We also look at and identify the unique and long lead time items. If it's a 5 horsepower T-frame motor, 1800 RPM, there's no reason to have a bunch of those on the shelf because most motor shops or distributors stock those. It's a special one-offs that you want to make sure that you have so it doesn't compromise your production. Looking for unique assets, the stuff that the OEM built where you've got to go back to them and buy the spare motor. We're looking for those. We're also looking for crossover assets. So you've got a 1,000 horsepower motor and it's in a certain frame, but if we drill another set of footholes in it, you can go on another application. So we're looking for that kind of stuff. Anything that we can do to keep your inventory level down and keep you up and running is going to save you guys money. Then we look at how you're controlling your spare motors. We look at centralizing the inventory or decentralizing the inventory. Where are you keeping the motors? Kind of a weird story. Very large pharmaceutical company in Michigan, multiple units or multiple areas within that corporation. Each electrician was responsible for a building. Each electrician had their own little stash of motors, and they wouldn't share. So literally, a production can be stopped on this side of the road while this guy's sitting on 5 of those motors. So we brought all the motors into our warehouse. The first year we did that, saved them $30,000 because when they would call us, we'd look in their inventory to see if we can give them their motor back. Also, having the motors off-site or in a centralized controlled area, that keeps people from going in and pulling the brush holders out of it. You know, in the middle of the night, the guy's got a DC motor with arcing brushes. Oh, there's one in the storeroom. Let's pop the cover off of it and take the brushes out of it. Nobody says anything to the warehouse person. Break down a month later, they go to put it in, there's no brushes in it. Again, we're not cannibalizing the motors. We also make sure that if we're controlling the inventory, it's a first in, first out. Middle of the night, electrician pulls a motor. He's going to take the one that's shiny, it's pretty, it's new, keep shoving that other motor to the back. Eventually, that motor in the back is out of warranty because it's sat there for so long. So we look at, should the motors come off your location and let us manage them, or with our help, can we teach you how to manage them? We review how you're storing your motors. Is it clean? Is it heated? Dry environment? Are you storing the motors too close to the process? We've had people say, well, if the motor's close to the equipment that I'm going to put it on, that'll save me time. In a foundry situation or a steel mill situation, where you've got all this stuff in the air, you want a freshly rebuilt motor sitting 5 feet from the run-out tables with scale and stuff running all over the place. Not a good environment. The other thing we do with a full-blown program is we set up motor testing. Just because the motor comes in from the manufacturer in a brand new box and it's wrapped in plastic doesn't mean it's perfect. Everybody's probably bought a car that had to go back to the dealership to get something done to it. Motors can have a problem. So a motor comes in, we pull it out of the box, we test run it. Make sure it's a good motor. We have a checklist of things that we're going to go through to make sure that it's the right motor, that everything's been done to spec for that motor. Also repaired motors. Whether we repair the motor or one of our partners repairs the motor for larger programs, it gets test run before it gets put on the shelf. So taking a motor off the truck and saying it's a ready spare, something we don't do. This particular photograph here is one of our larger warehouses. In that warehouse, there's 7,000 assets. Within those 7,000 assets, there's 700 that they deem as critical spares. So quarterly, every shaft is spun. Twice a year, every motor is megger tested. The motors that are deemed critical are pulled off the shelf for a full voltage test run once a year. Again, got to know that your motors are ready for service. The data portion of it, knowing what you have, the condition of the assets, and the history of not only the assets but the driven equipment is imperative. Having the right information at your fingertips, you're going to know what happens in a breakdown situation. With our software, you have a breakdown, you can pull out your phone, type in the tag number of the failed motor, hit find replacement, and it shows you where your spare motors are. That's the kind of stuff you want to know when you're trying to have a good program, make sure that you get adequately spared. Going back to our tag and survey process, we're going to go to the motor. That unique identifier is put on there, the motor's social security number. We're documenting the enclosure. We're documenting what it runs. We're documenting how it mounts. We're documenting where the connection box is at. If it's an F2 where it's on the opposite side, you want to know that. In the middle of the night, you're not going to switch that motor around. You need to have a spare with it in the F2 location. All that information is tagged and put in our, what we call our TrackRat database, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Again, the information is available 24/7. You can look at the history of that motor. You can look at how many places it's been put in. You can look at the repair information. You put the motor in, you think it's pulling high amps. Instead of waiting until tomorrow morning to call your motor shop, bring the motor up in our system, bring the repair history up, and you can see what we had it running at in our shop or your other vendor's shop. You can also look and see what the vibration levels are. I mentioned TrackRat earlier. This is our software. It's proprietary. It's something that Mark Hatfield thought this thing up on the golf course one day. No, I'm joking. But Mark Hatfield thought this up many years ago, and it's evolved. It evolved from when I started at HECO a long time ago, and you were the guy on call, you carried a briefcase, and it was like the president's football. And it had stacks of inventory levels in there. And it went from there, it went to standalone, where we had computers at the customer, and the salesman would go in every week, and he'd take the old floppy out and put a new one in. Now we're web-based. So we can actually change information instantly, and instantly you can see it. The other thing to think about with TrackRat is it's a library of history. So you can go in, you can enter a tag number or search by the identification of the motor, whether it be a 5 or 1,000 horse at 18, you can find the motor. You can go in there and you can see how many places that motor's been throughout its life. So now what we're trying to figure out is that motor failing every place we put it? There's something wrong with the inherent design of that motor that's causing it to fail. Or is it the application that's causing the motor to fail? We can look at it and we can say, every time something is put on number 4 pump motor, it only lasts 6 months. Now, let's dig into it and find out why it's failing. Is it Something is the wrong design motor. Does it need more horsepower? Does it need a different kind of bearing? That's the reliability portion of TrackRat. And then the inventory analysis, when we do our survey, so we've got a list of motors that are in service and a list of spare motors. We crush those two reports together and we tell you, do you have enough adequate spares for your applications? If you've got 500 applications, it's an exaggeration here, but a big company like yours, Dale, 500 applications for a 20 horsepower motor, and you've got one spare, you're not adequately spared. It'll also tell you where you've got too many motors. If you've got 100 spares for 500 in service, you're overstocked. And do you have motors that you no longer have an application for? Years ago, the process changed, and they threw away the equipment, but they didn't throw away the motors. So now you've got motors taking up space, you're paying carrying costs on them, and you don't need them. So then we help you identify which ones you don't need, help you sell them off, or get rid of them through attrition. The snippet you're looking at the bottom here is something out of our TrackRat, and we did a fine replacement for a 40 horsepower 1200 RPM motor in a 364 T-frame. So what you're looking there in red is that motor's social security number. It's a unique identifier. Beside that is the storeroom location at this particular paper mill. So they have a failure, they go in, they either put in the failed motor tag number, or they put in that they're looking for a 40 horse at 12 and a 364 T. So now you're looking at, there's 3 of them available. The shelf location is there is the K3 number, really easy to find. It's classified as a spare, and those are the next is the PO number that it was either purchased or repaired under. If you had no spares, you could also look at your in-service motors to see if you could pull one off one line and put it on another if you need the motor that bad. The trending and analysis portion of the data part of this, and this is what you see if you were to open up our software or TrackRat database. The first thing you're going to see is a pie chart. That pie chart is failures that we've documented in our shop. It is not root cause failure. It's the failures that we saw when the motor was being torn down. So you got pieces of the pie there. This is the motors that you've seen that we've had in our shop over the last year. If you click on one of these pieces of the pie, it breaks it down even further. So clicking on electrical on the left side brings you to the breakdown of the electrical failures on the right side. Clicking on that will give you even more in-depth description. It'll tell you if it was, as an example, a single-phase situation. Then you can say, okay, in the last year, we spent $40,000 because we had motors single-phase. Then you can break it down even further. So we spent $40,000 on motors being single-phase on the pickle line. Now you're looking at, why are we having a problem with single-phase motors on the pickle line? Breaking it down even further. We're going to take the software a little further, and we can say, okay, we want to look at all the failures we've had in 100 horsepower, 1800 RPM motors. We can look and see what the failure mode was there. If you wanted to break it down even further, if you wanted to say, okay, I want to just look at my failures on GE motors, and you could break it down that way. So anything that you could think of that you'd want to break that down, we can get you there, and that's about improving reliability. The specification portion of it is you need to have a repair spec based on your industry. If you're in steel, a repair spec for paper is not going to do you any good. If you're in pharmaceutical, you don't need something that's based on steel. So we try to help you write a repair specification or a new motor specification based on your application. And then again, all repair shops are not alike. So what might be a standard recondition for HECO might not be a standard recondition for Bill's Motor Shop. If our recondition spec says that we're doing a balance, re-insulate, all that kind of stuff, you want to make sure that you're getting the same thing from the other vendor. So we help you write a repair and a new product specification. Again, our repair spec is based on your plants and processes. You could break it down even further. If you're in the paper industry, you're going to say, okay, all the motors that go on the wet end are going to be repaired this way. They're going to have a special seal on the drive-in to keep the water out. Or they're going to be in pharmaceutical, all the motors in this process are going to be stainless steel. Again, if it's documented, you're not reinventing the wheel every time. You get the right motor for the right application, and it'll last you a long time, hopefully. And then determine a root cause failure. If you're using multiple vendors, if you're using HECO and you're using Bill and you're using Steve for repair, make sure that there's some continuity between all your repair vendors and they're all using the same process to find out the failure mode. Replacement motors. Buy a motor that matches your application and your needs. Buy a severe duty if you're in a wet environment, a steel environment. I had a customer one time who said, I need a 10 horsepower motor and I want the cheapest one you can get because I need to replace it every 2 months because it failed. And I'm like, no, wait a minute here. Why don't you give me one of those motors, let me bring it in, find out why it's failing. And maybe you don't buy the cheapest, maybe you buy a middle of the road motor and it lasts 8 months. Or it lasts a year instead of constantly buying the same one. So try to buy the motor based on the application that you've got there, not dollars and cents. In the long run, it'll pay off. Vendor evaluation. Know where your motors are going. You buy a $50,000 pickup truck, you're gonna take it back to the dealership that's clean, that's shiny, that's got all the equipment to repair that truck. People will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for a motor and send it to a repair shop that they've never, ever been to. The guy comes in with a shiny line card and a dozen donuts every Friday. You've never been to his shop. You don't know if he's got the equipment to test it. You don't know if he can lift it. You've never been there. So either you yourself qualify that vendor or we can go out and help you qualify vendors. One of our largest equipment management customers, steel manufacturer, came to us and they said, we're using, I think it was 14 vendors at the time. We want to narrow it down. With our agreement with them, we went and qualified the vendors that they were using. Now, we didn't necessarily kick vendors out, but if the guy's limits are 200 horsepower, why are you sending him a 5,000 horsepower motor? I've been in this industry for a long time and I hear these horror stories of, I sent this 5,000 horse to Bill, and it was so big, he had to tear it down in his parking lot with a forklift to get the parts inside his building. First of all, it's unsafe as hell. Second of all, he's going to drop your motor. So know where your motors are going, make sure they're going to the right place, and make sure the people can fix what you've got. If the guy doesn't have a medium voltage test panel, why are you sending your motor to him? So we go into these, our people that are sometimes competitors and sometimes they're partners for us. Go in and evaluate what they've got there, their facilities, their equipment. Does the vendor have the right equipment to do what is needed? Is he calibrating his equipment? He can have the nicest Baker tester in the world, but if it's been sitting there for 15 years and never been calibrated, what are you getting in your repair? We evaluate those vendors. We make sure that they're calibrating their equipment. And going back to crane capacity, what is their crane capacity? Just because a guy can only lift 2 tons does not make him a bad motor shop. But don't send him something that's, 50,000 pounds. HECO's a little different in that we love to repair motors, but we don't want to repair the motor constantly. That's not right for you. So let's bring the motor in, let's ask the question why it failed, and see if we can make it better. Our company was started by Terry Hatfield in 1959 with his mindset of, can we make it better? We'd like to be remembered not for how many motors we repaired for you, but how many motors we solved the issue on. Once the motor goes out, hopefully we never see it again. For those of you who don't know about HECO, I've been, it was started in 1959 by Terry Hatfield. Terry's still around, great guy. I've known him for 38 years. Our headquarters in Kalamazoo. 65,000 square feet of repair and distribution in Kalamazoo. 4 years ago, we acquired a competitive motor shop, which is about 2 miles away from us. And that's 50,000 square feet. And in there, we've got large motor storage, and we've got a winding room, a clean winding room that's with a 50-ton crane over it. The Lexington Service Center, that we purchased them 4 years ago, I believe. And 10,000 square foot facility, pump and motor repair, I think up to 500 horsepower. They also sell new motors. And then if they run into motors that exceed their capabilities, they come to Kalamazoo. The Middletown warehouse is a customer-held inventory. That's 65,000 square feet. That's for one of our steel mill partners. There's 7,000 assets in there. Lima, Ohio is a warehouse that we're stocking up to 300 horsepower GE IEEE motors. And in Battle Creek is where we store our surplus motors. Those are up to 14,500 horsepower right now. So as the coal-fired plants are closing down, instead of the motor going into a scrap pile and being melted, we're breaking those motors in and trying to get them back into industry. So if you've got an odd motor, give us a call. We might be able to help you out. We also do redesign. So if you have a frame that you need to match, a lot of times we can redesign that motor and make it work for you. August 1st, we acquired a company called Alran. That's in Detroit. Again, a smaller shop, up to 500 horsepower. We purchased them for quick turnaround stuff and servo repair, spindle motors. Repair services or capabilities in Kalamazoo, it says up to 30,000 horsepower, but we've exceeded that. Electrical testing and running, 13,800 volts at 4,000 kVA gives us one of the largest test panels in the Midwest. A lot of people have 13.8, but do they have 4,000 kVA? It's about 170 amps that we can run the motor at. DC motor testing, 750 volts DC, 1,500 amps. We're running synchronous motors, wound rotor motors, eddy current drives. Our field service capabilities grows almost weekly. Turnkey removals and installs, PDMA testing routes of electric motors and generators. We do brush maintenance programs where we go in, every 6 months, make sure the brushes are good and kind of takes some of the work off you guys. Our Lexington shop was purchased for the pump repair capabilities. They do vacuum pumps, blowers, fan repair, electric motor repair, and again, anything that they can't handle can come to Kalamazoo. This is a synchronous motor that is actually run as a synchronous motor. A lot of shops will short them out and they'll run them as an induction motor. We have the capability to run this as a synchronous. Our test bed there has got 47 yards of concrete underneath it, one of the largest test stands in the United States. We also do on-site hydro rewinds. Going back to the early 20s, a lot of hydros were installed where the building was actually built around the hydro. You can't get it back out without taking the building apart. We'll send our crew on site, they'll strip it, repair it on site. Repair services, I could go through this, but guys, there's not much we turn away. If it is something that we're not good at, we are going to turn it away. We're not going to tell you that we can handle it just to get it in the door. We're very upfront with our customers. The bottom picture there is one that was wound in our clean room. That's a 4160 volt motor. It's our VPI capabilities. We have an 8-foot tank at our shop on Burdick Street. That's epoxy resin that goes to 7,200 volts. And our other facility has a 10-foot epoxy resin tank, high voltage, it goes to 15 kV. One thing that kind of makes us a little bit different than other shops is we do before and after core loss test. I don't know if you know what that is, but actually if you put a motor in a burnout oven, you can destroy it if you don't do it properly. So we do a core loss test on it with infrared pictures to make sure that the core is good. After it comes out and it's stripped, we do another core loss test with infrared to make sure that nothing has changed and we haven't compromised the integrity of the laminations. Again, our goal is to ask why. If you guys are in any kind of industry, you've got motor shops calling on you all the time, and they all say we can fix your motor. and we can fix your motor, but we're going to ask why it failed. Did it have the right bearing in it for the application? Was it sized properly? Is it the right motor for your industry? We ask a lot of questions. Prioritization, to maximize the reliability of the equipment, prioritization of the repairs and parts and manpower are extremely important. If we have an understanding of your plant, and we have that through equipment management and a motor survey, we're going to know what you have for spares and what you don't have for spares. So based on that, we can know that we can base our turnaround times on what you have. So a motor comes into us, we do an evaluation on what's the best path forward. One of those paths is not quick fixes. We don't, if you're going to send us a motor and you say, I just want you to change the non-drive-in bearing, that's not us. We're about repairing it right, repairing it the first time. It might take a day longer, but it's going to last you longer in the long run. People always say, well, just get me up and running and I'll pull it out in 2 weeks and we'll repair it right. You never pull it out in 2 weeks. You run it until it fails, and it's not a good situation. So we're looking for long-term reliability. Then we also look at, should you pay rush overtime to get it fixed? With our steel mill partner that we have, we look at other motors within their corporation to see if they have a spare. So I can look at 5 or 6 plants to see if they have a spare that I can pull from another location and not charge them overtime to get that motor repaired. Kind of like the simple thing of, let me treat you like I'd want to be treated. Why would I want to take your money when I could pull a solution out and save you money? The other option might be buying it, selling you a new motor, or selling you a new motor and modifying it to match the failed motor, or finding a surplus motor. So again, what's the best solution for you guys without compromising quality? And I talked about this a little earlier, observations and findings. This is key to us. Very useful tool, especially when you guys want to pay for a modification in your system. You want to buy a certain motor because you're having failures on number 3 line. This will tell you exactly where the failures are, how much you've paid for those failures, and it's just a great tool. Quality control. Your repair process should work hand in hand with the repair specification. You can write a specification, but if the repair shop you're sending it to can't meet it, you've accomplished nothing. You know, when you go to a repair shop, do they have a written quality procedure? How are they documenting the motor when they tear it down? We've gone to some tablet software that we designed. So if the mechanic is measuring a bearing journal, he types in what he actually measures. The software tells us if it's out of specification or not. He doesn't have to sit there and go, okay, well, it's 3 thousandths oversized. The software does that, and the software will make recommendations on how it's repaired. Kind of takes the human error out of it. Look at when you're selecting a motor shop, are the technicians being trained? When was the last time they had an update on how to do a Baker test or how to do a growler test or open rotor test? Make sure that they're being trained constantly. Again, is the software, are the measurements being recorded? And is that information saved? When you get a report from us, you're going to have the incoming information and the outgoing information. The incoming information is very important. Is the equipment calibrated? And is there a sign-off process? You'd be surprised how your quality goes up if somebody has to put their initials beside what they've done. So if you're going to hold the person accountable for it, your quality is going to go up. As far as maintaining the in-plant equipment, to get the maximum reliability, you've got to do some kind of predictive services. It's just the way things are happening now. Predictive can give you so much information about your equipment, about how it's running, and avoid those unpredicted breakdowns. One of the offerings that we have is called Apollo. It's a continuous asset condition monitoring program that Luke's going to talk more about here in a little bit. It's a really cool program. It kind of takes the onus off you guys of knowing what a bearing spectrum is. We do all that for you. We put the accelerometers on it. We have a signal comes to us, we look at it and say, hey, it's go, it's no go, shut it down, whatever. You guys don't have to train your people on what those squiggly lines are, what a bearing spectra is. His program also has a performance guarantee if you opt to go that way. Predictive services, route-based. This photograph right here is Vince. Vince is here today. He's doing motion amplification. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but it's pretty cool. You got a motor that's vibrating. They say it's vibrating. You're having failures because of vibration. We can come in and say, is the motor actually moving or is the process moving? This particular picture was a slaughterhouse, and there were 15 of these all in a row. So we went in with our camera and we found out that the motor is moving in a different direction of the tank that it's sitting on. And it's never going to be a good process. It's a really weird design, but it eliminated the motor from the process, or from the failure mode. So we do route-based vibration, route-based thermography, infrared testing, ultrasound. Luke Timmer's group does PDMA electrical testing. We do oil analysis, motion amplification, and those can be done monthly, quarterly, whatever, based on your needs. But it's something that, for maximum reliability, think about having some predictive done in your plant. Field service. It's tough anymore to find people to be staffed to handle everything that you've got. So if you don't have the capabilities and don't have the experience doing this kind of stuff, we do turnkey repairs. People call us up and they say, we don't want to touch it. You pull it out, you repair it, you put it back in, you do a certified startup, and they do nothing. On-site balancing we do, brush maintenance, large plants that have a lot of DC motors, we go and check the brushes, seat the brushes, blow wipe and checks, we can do those. Dry ice blasting, equipment cleaning. We actually do lubrication routes. We have a large paper mill in Kalamazoo that doesn't have the manpower to do motor greasing anymore. And when they were doing it, it wasn't done right. They were pumping way too much grease in. So Luke's group does lubrication routes, does it with an ultrasound method. And we do visual walkthrough inspection. So you can have all these services available, all the IoT stuff, all the AI stuff, but nothing takes away from walking through a plant and looking at a motor and saying, the filter's plugged. There's not enough oil in it. The oil in it is black. So we do those visual walkthroughs. We come through, we spend a day in your plant, and we just write down things that we see. And we did that at a power plant, and it cut their repairs by a third. And we had some huge saves of finding motors that didn't have enough grease, or they had black oil in them, or not enough oil. They had black oil with the white bearing. So just something else. You don't have the manpower to do it, we can do that to help you. So in summary, putting all these together, our equipment management program enables you to maximize your availability and minimize the in-service equipment failures. Through HECO's model of equipment management, the benefits include eliminating unnecessary purchases. Why buy a motor that you already own, or why buy a motor that the corporation already owns? Reduce failures, increase reliability because you've got the right vendors supplying the right product to the right specification in the right places. Improve planning, identification of potential problems using historical data, make more informed decisions through the utilization of our predictive services. The ultimate goal, through the 6 elements of equipment management, helps you see what's going on with your machines and be prepared for what is to come. Where are your issues and what can be done to prevent those? Get rid of the issues either by doing the work, coming up with options, or telling you what needs to be done. And we stop the issue from happening again by doing it the right way when we repair it and asking the right questions. A few examples of successful programs that we've had, 4-station power company in northern Indiana. We've been with them almost 30 years. We are the exclusive repair supplier, or repair and new motor supplier for them. Everything from a 1/4 horsepower motor or a bathroom exhaust fan to 15,000 horsepower. They were repaired by us or purchased through us. Our cost savings to them right now is about $20 million, and this is not including their lack of downtime, and it's because of we're applying the right motor to the right application. We're giving them discounts on new motors because of our buying power and because of the matrix pricing, where it's set pricing, it's a negotiated rate. We know every motor in that plant. We store their spare motors, the motors are maintained, and we were told by the director of power generation that with our program and the partnership that we have for them, motors are the least of their failure modes right now. So it's not rocket science. It's something that we do, that we've kind of perfected over the years, and kind of cool that nobody else is doing it. All right? Okay, thanks guys, appreciate your time.